Hello, everyone. I'm Tara Lawn. Welcome to Time Out with Tinseltown Mom. I'm here today with Roxanna Elden. Roxanna has over a decade of experience as a public school English teacher and speaks to audiences all over the country about educational issues. She recently wrote a Washington Post essay that offers a teacher's guide for parents reluctantly homeschooling their kids. Her work has also been featured on NPR, the New York Times, and The Atlantic, and recently she authored the book, Adequate Yearly Progress, a novel. On this episode, we're going to discuss best practices for parents who find themselves homeschooling their kids during this quarantine. Hi, Roxanna. Welcome to the show.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Well, thanks for being here today. I'm sure a lot of parents are just itching to get your knowledge. So thank you so much for helping us. You're helping a lot of us today.
Let's see what we can do.
Okay, well, why don't we start by getting to know you a little bit better? Can you just kind of give us a little insight into you and your family dynamic?
Well, I am pacing around a room filled with clean but not yet folded laundry with my family in the other room so that I can talk to you. I think that tells a lot about my situation, but also probably a lot of people's situations right now.
Mm-hmm.
So my biggest background that relates to the current crisis is that for over a decade, I've been talking to rookie teachers about the trials and tribulations of the first year on the job. It was one of the hardest years of my life was my first year teaching. There were a lot of things I felt nobody told me. And so my first book I actually wrote during my sister's first year of teaching. She started the career about 3 years after I did. And I started just collecting the stories and being honest about the things that I thought nobody was honest about. And just writing this book that ended up becoming See Me After Class, Advice for Teachers by Teachers. The original title that I had in mind was Hard Liquor for the New Teacher's Soul. So nobody would publish the title Hard Liquor for the Teacher's Soul. But I felt like that was what I was trying to get at because somebody had given me the book Chicken Soup for the New Teacher's Soul during my first year. And I just thought, like, this is so much, I need something so much stronger than this.
Oh, okay. That makes sense.
So, yeah. So ever since I've been speaking to new teachers and what I've realized during this coronavirus crisis where every parent is now a teacher in their own home is that every parent is not just a teacher, but they're a rookie teacher. They're learning on the job. They're experiencing these rookie mistakes that they have to bounce back from. And a lot of times they're beating themselves up in the same way that rookie teachers do because so many people tell both parents and teachers that this is the most important job you'll ever have. There's no, you'll make no difference in the world more than the difference you make in the life of a child. And underneath all that, there's this kind of undertone of, you better not mess this up. So the problem is sometimes you do feel like you're messing it up. And you feel that way even more, for example, if you're only sleeping 5 hours a night because you're staying up late trying to fit more into the day, sometimes on behalf of the kids. But you end up kind of driving yourself into this situation where your treadmill is up too high and you can't keep up.
So you're saying as parents, we need your first book to help us through this period. I think that's what we need.
Okay, so my first book it's very specific to teaching issues. But what I did do is collected my most relevant to parents advice into a free 1-week email series for parents, which is on the homepage of my website, which is roxannaelden.com. And it's a 1-week sanity-saving email series for parents who are learning to become teachers on the fly.
Amazing.
So if you want to buy the book, by all means. But those are the things that, I think parents need something really fast right now.
Right.
So
now, are you still a teacher in class, Roxanna?
I'm not a classroom teacher anymore. I actually stopped when my children were born because I was finishing up this novel, Adequate Yearly Progress, which is also set in a school. It's people usually compare it to The Office, but set in an urban school, in an urban high school. I had been working on that for about 5 years when my daughter was born, and I just kind of had to finish it. So I ended up leaving the classroom at that point, but I still do speak to teachers and speak on various education issues.
Okay. And you have 2 kids of your own, right?
5 and a 6-year-old.
Okay. So I guess you're like us, just finding yourself in this situation where you're having to homeschool, quote unquote, your children. And, a lot of parents, a lot of them feel stressed out because they're also working full-time jobs. So it's kind of hard to juggle it sometimes. And they do feel like they're continuing to fail at it, And I know it's all a work in progress. We're all learning and, we have to have grace with one another. But just like off the bat, like what would you say to parents like who feel just overwhelmed right now just because they're working, they're trying to keep up with the kids' school and everything? Like, would you just say anything right off the bat if you could? I know it's kind of a broad question.
Sure. No. Right off the bat. So the very first email in the series, for example, talks about the 2 rookie mistakes that are very common for teachers to make one or the other of these mistakes. And I think just based on all the advice that's swirling around out there for parents are very likely to steer too hard in one of 2 directions right now. So the first direction is this kind of like, now it's our chance to be super parents. To be super teachers. So they've got like these color-coded schedules. They're looking up all these science experiments on YouTube and sharing them with each other. And they're, looking at other people's homeschool highlight reels. And these are the parents that have turned the treadmill up to its highest setting from the beginning. And they're most likely to just kind of exhaust themselves and overpromise too much of a harsh daily schedule to keep up with. So those parents right around now are having to find ways to slow down their teaching treadmills. And that could be anything from really looking at your schedule and deciding what you're doing daily that you could maybe do weekly, deciding what the kids could do for you, deciding what you could just never mention to them again and they won't ask you about it. And you want to get things down to where if something takes 15 minutes too long, it doesn't bump so hard into the next activity that it just makes you go crazy. So, that's a common mistake for new teachers. I think it's a common mistake for homeschool parents who are trying to keep up with what they think they should do. I've had a few moments like that already myself. And on the other side, what's that?
I was just going to ask, what's the flip side of that?
Okay, so the flip side of that is there's a whole bunch of even funny and entertaining articles out there that basically say, I'm not going to homeschool my kid. I'm not going to do anything. I'm going to put them in front of the TV. This is not mom school. And those are more relaxing to read. And I think there are parents out there who feel relieved just kind of reading that advice and saying, yeah, I'm not a teacher. I have other things on my plate. Let the kids do whatever they want. But what teachers will tell you, especially if they walked into the class on their first day of the career and wanted to be the cool, relaxed teacher, the class ends up getting so out of control that they can't get the kids to do anything. And all of a sudden, they're the least cool teacher in the school. And they have to pretty much raise their voice or, get to an emotional 11 to get anything to happen in their class. So I think the parents that went into it too relaxed right now are having what new teachers would call classroom management issues, where suddenly the kids are so accustomed to playing video games all day that when you actually need them to do something, it's an uphill battle every time. And what I would say to those parents is, first of all, the kids, so you're at an advantage. You're at an advantage over a new teacher who has a class of, let's say, 25 kids that they just met while they were trying to be the cool teacher.
Yeah, that's true.
But also, it's never too late to say, you know what, we treated the first few weeks of this like it was spring break. But now that this is lasting longer than we thought, we really do need some type of routine. And the main way to get started is just take a marker board or a pencil and paper and pencil in a daily routine. And your main job is to do your very best to get everyone to follow that routine every day.
Yeah. And yeah, that's great. I love your analogies, by the way. Those are awesome. So I guess there's different types of homeschooling parents because some teachers, they have, like my kids, they're on Zoom. They have like 4 Zoom calls a day. So it's kind of like managing my work schedule with their work schedule and making sure, okay, are you on your call? Are you doing, you know what I mean? So it's managing all those different schedules. But then on the other side, there's some homeschooling parents who maybe it's not as structured where they're finding themselves having to do a lot more work than they anticipated. In that scenario, let's say there's a parent who's finding themselves doing more work and they're thinking maybe it should be offloaded a little bit more on the teacher. Like, do you think that those parents should have a conversation with the teacher just to kind of balance it, quote unquote, a little bit? Or
that is very touchy. That's very touchy, and I'm even seeing that with my own. My 2 kids go to 2 different schools, and I'm dealing with 2 different teachers who I really generally am very happy with during the school year. But there's so much just kind of coming through the pipeline that is driving me crazy as a parent. And I feel like the teachers don't realize what it looks like on the parent end.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I know from experience as a teacher that a lot of times parents don't know what's going on the teacher's end. So my sister's still a teacher, and so are most of my best friends. And what they're getting from their principals and their district administrators is that the rules are constantly changing. And when they pass those things on to the parents complain back to them. And then they have to go tell their administrators, which can be difficult for teachers. So they're getting these constantly changing messages about what's graded, about whether they're supposed to recreate the school day for the kids or just kind of give them a list of things to do. And then different sets of parents want different things.
Yeah. So you can't please everyone.
What's that?
I say yes. So you can't please every parent.
Everyone. Yeah, and I just think that they are hearing a lot of complaints from parents.
Okay.
So you can approach the teacher, but the teacher is going as crazy as you are, maybe for different reasons. But this is really hard on everyone. Nobody is prepared for it. So I always, if I'm going to write something to the teacher, I always, step away from it for an hour or have someone else read it or even sleep on it.
See, that's good advice because there's probably a lot of parents on the edge of like contacting the teacher or the school, just, talking to them about their specific issues. So, and you never know how things are going to be in a couple of weeks. It could get a little bit smoother as time goes on. Now,
I think so. And that has been the case. Yeah.
Now, do you mind sharing just from your point of view, like what is your typical teaching schedule or day looks like with your 2 kids?
Sure. So I have 3 different dry erase marker boards on my fridge right now, and all of them have been erased and restructured multiple times. One's a weekly schedule of who's in charge of what during different hours during the week between me and my husband. One of them is the daily routine that the kids are supposed to be following. And then one is just a chore list for everybody in the house, what everyone's responsible for. And I put things on there, even if we're used to doing them a certain way. I just need to be able to look at that and see that people know what they're supposed to be doing and when. So our daily routine is we start with the work that is assigned by the school. And I'm doing my very, very best to find out which of these assignments are graded and which are not. I'm finding that teachers are being somewhat vague about that because I think they're getting mixed messages from above. The other thing I always try to do is start the day with something that the kids are used to doing that they can do more or less on their own. So if there's a specific daily assignment that your kid gets every day and is more or less the same, but maybe with just a different topic, or if it's a computerized program, you may want to start with that because that buys you some time where you can then go and look on the computerized system for additional directions or whatever messages are coming through about what's supposed to happen in the school day. Your child is already working on something while you're figuring out the day.
Right.
That's something that as a teacher, you also learn very quickly. The kids should always know exactly what to do the first 15 minutes of class. So you're not waiting for everyone to gather and then quiet down and then give you the directions. You might want to finish your coffee, finish what you're writing on the board, and have the kids already working on something that they're used to.
That's a good idea. I like that.
Yeah. Now, after lunch, that is when our energy is a little bit lower for doing academic activities. So anything that's a little more fun or maybe a required video would go after lunch. But as soon as possible after lunch, we try to wrap things up as far as schoolwork and go outside for a walk or get some type of exercise. And then around this time that I'm talking to you, actually, we have 1 hour of mandatory nobody bothers anybody time. So, whatever people are doing, it has to be quiet, and you're not allowed to ask for any type of help. Don't ask for, someone to put a video on for you. Don't ask for a page from the, computer paper. Just, you have to be able to do what you're doing on your own.
I think I'm going to implement that one right there. I like that.
Glad I could help.
Now, what do you think about, kids are at home. It's a little different here. What if kids want to do some sort of electronics on their break? Do you, like watching TV or maybe playing a video game? Do you advise for or against that?
I feel like that's such a personal decision for each family.
Yeah.
That I don't want to weigh in too much. But I do kind of feel like you want to limit how much you rely on that and not relax your personal limits on that too much, because it's going to be very, very hard to come back from that. That being said, there are times when you've just had it and the kids have just had it and you can't get into a power struggle with them right now because it's just like the 10th power struggle of the day and everyone's so exhausted that it's not going to turn out well. And that would be a time that you can let them do something that you might not normally let them do.
Okay.
Within reason.
Yeah. Okay. Now, what about, there's some parents, they have curriculums for their kids where, they're doing a bulk of it, like maybe even teaching subjects they never thought they'd have to teach. Do you have any advice or can offer a place to go to for resources for them to get help on, how to best teach their kids? Let's say it's algebra or whatever the case may be. Do you have any ideas for them?
So there are a ton of resources for every subject. I don't have specific ones that I recommend, but if you know what your child is supposed to be learning, you can probably find the resources for it. A bigger issue that I think parents have right now is so many resources coming at them that they actually don't know what to say. Nope, we're not doing that right now. At new teacher orientation, whenever I give speeches at new teacher orientation, I always tell them, you guys are not just on information overload, you're on super important information overload. And the difference is that not only do you have a ton of information coming at you, but every little piece of information has this kind of moral baggage attached to it. So it's like, oh, you didn't read that, binder about child psychology? Well, you're probably going to ruin some kids' lives. Oh, you didn't read the HR binder? Oh, you're probably going to get, publicly fired. And those things build up and it makes it impossible to prioritize. So what I tell teachers to do is that their very first filing system is something that I call a big box. And what they need for it is just a big box. And on the side of the box, they write ideas for later. And everything that seems like it might be a good idea, but they just don't have time or a place to implement it right now, they just put it in the box. They don't worry about alphabetizing. They don't worry about deciding the quality of anything. They just want to know where it is in case they're looking for it later. And that way, they can get some of those kind of ideas that would be nice, but they don't have time for it right now. They can get that out of the way, off of their teacher desk, off of their ironing board at home, and just worry about what really needs to be in front of them.
Mm-hmm. That's good. I like that. That's good advice. Now let's talk about routines. Like, how important do you think that is to have like a routine every day? Let's say, like, do you think the kids need to get up and get their street clothes on every day and do something at 12 o'clock where they're outside, or, you know what I mean? Like PE at 12:30, like, let's talk about that a little bit. Like, what are your thoughts on just having a routine for them on a consistent basis?
Okay, I spend as much of my day as possible in my pajamas. So I definitely don't think that they need to get dressed just to be at school at my dining room table. But I do think it's important to have a routine where more or less you know what you're doing for each hour of the day. And I'm very, very strict on the start time, which is 9 o'clock. So they have to eat, we eat our breakfast. They can play around a little bit if they ate fast. But at 9 o'clock, they have to be at the dining room table. My daughter has to start her computerized reading program. My son starts whatever I can get him busy with. And then I read the teacher's lessons for the day. And then I try really hard also to wrap up the academics before everybody's energy for that type of activity runs out. I've so far been pretty good about getting some type of physical activity into the day. But beyond that, I mean, I don't think you need to have like a very, very, very scheduled routine, but it depends on you, because some people need more structure in their life. But I think everyone, especially right now, needs some structure that they put in there themselves, because people don't realize how much of the structure was made for them when school was in session.
Right. All right. And then what about for kids who they want to get up early? Let's say, like my kids, sometimes they want to get up at like 6:30 in the morning and get started on their homework, because they actually have a schedule for the week where they can, they just look at it and they see what they need to do on their tablets or whatever. Like, do you encourage that? Like them getting up early and that means they're finishing their work by, let's say, noon or 1 p.m. and then they're done with all their schoolwork. Do you think it's okay for them to start that early, or do you think they should kind of stick to
I mean, if it's working for them and for you, absolutely.
Okay.
I mean, if they have, in general, I mean, I'm just so jealous right now that you said that I don't even know what to say. But you said your kids are 9 and 11, right?
Right.
So, I mean, if they're self-motivated and they want to be on a schedule and they have kind of a checklist to go through for school, I actually think that's ideal. The ideal way to run things would be to just treat every grade like a college class right now, which is you have a syllabus, you have weekly things that you need to do. And if the kids are doing them on their own, really, who are we to interfere with that wonderful situation?
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, the other question is, how responsible are you for keeping the kids entertained once they're done with their work?
Yeah, that's the question.
So what in that particular situation, you might need some understandings in place if you're trying to work from home and they're done at 1. You just might need some understandings about what they are and are not allowed to do starting at that point. Everything from how much screen time are they allowed to have, but also, do you need some space so you can get your work done?
Mm-hmm. And that's where boundaries come into play. Did we talk about boundaries?
We can talk about boundaries.
Okay. Well, especially, when you're working from home while the kids are being homeschooled, I'm just thinking there probably should be some set boundaries because this is all new to everyone. Like, do you have boundaries like in place for your household? Like, what does that look like, if you don't mind sharing? Like, maybe.
Sure.
You mentioned one that was really good, as far as from this time to this time for an hour, you don't ask any questions or do anything like that. So,
right. So there's 1 hour of quiet time. Additionally, so this goes back also to what teachers would call classroom management, which is that you make decisions in advance and you teach those decisions to everybody. And then everybody kind of already knows what the guidelines are on different issues. So, for example, you may have a situation where you're working and you have to be on a call. If they see you on the phone, they should already know what the rules are when their parents are on a work-related call or any call. And you want those set up enough in advance that they stop the behavior that would really bother you one step before it starts. So for example, if you're on an important call with your boss, you don't even want the worry in the back of your head that the kids are going to come bother you or whine in your ear. So you may just say, you cannot be, next to the door of the room that I'm in if I'm on this call. Or maybe there's a sign you put on the door when you're on a specific type of call. And you just tell them there's no exceptions unless, it's like a 911 type of emergency, to the fact that you cannot be near me when I'm on the phone for work. Mm-hmm. Other boundaries, though, and these are actually more like a classroom. You need a boundary, for example, if you have two kids that you're trying to teach two different things to, just about what one kid is allowed to do while you're explaining something or helping the other kid. So it can never be whoever whines the loudest gets what they want or gets your attention.
Yeah.
If you're asking questions, if you're actually kind of running a class yourself because that's the situation you're in, it can never be whoever answers first gets to answer the question. It has to be whoever I'm pointing to answers the question. Or it could be, think of the answer in your head, and when I count to 3, you both answer at the same time. If you establish those things, whatever's driving you crazy, basically, sit down and think about it when the kids are not there, and think what rule would stop this behavior, not just when it's starting, but one step before it starts to drive me crazy.
That's good. That's good. I think something else that might be hard for parents too is just depending on their load, depending on what the teachers have given them. Let's say they do have a weekly schedule, like my kids have a weekly schedule. They're pretty self-sufficient. But initially when I got that schedule, I was thinking, I feel like I need to hover over them more, but I didn't really need to, but I just felt guilty for not. Like I felt like, okay, I'm a homeschooling parent now. I need to hover and make sure and help them with their math, but they were just kind of doing it on their own. So I know yours, it sounds like yours is more academic where you're more involved. Like, do you find that you're kind of hovering over and watching and staying there while they're doing their work, or are you letting them be self-sufficient while you're in the other room, maybe doing your own work? Like, how do you balance that as a parent where, you're making sure you're giving them the time, I guess the present time, like them seeing you, and as opposed to being in another room doing your own stuff? I don't know if that came out the right way.
I mean, I can't really do too much in another room unless someone else is watching them.
Yeah.
As far as their work. But what I do realize is I have to, I wouldn't say hover, but I have to really be present when they get started to make sure they understand what they're doing. Once they are off to a good start, I can get a little bit lost in something on my computer, which would be at the same table as them. Even if it's just something like emailing their teachers or checking the next assignment or answering an email on my own, I can get into it as long as they are fully into what they're doing and know what they're doing. Otherwise, we're gonna start a dynamic where they have to become increasingly needy to get my attention.
Yeah.
But on the flip side of that, it's actually a pretty common rookie misjudgment or I shouldn't even say that. It's actually pretty common for newer teachers, which parents are right now, to feel like they have to hover. I don't think I ever stopped pacing around my classroom for my entire first year. Whereas the teachers with more experience, they could get the kids started on their math work, and then they could sit down and grade the spelling quizzes before the kids finished, because they were confident enough that the kids were working and, knew what they were supposed to be doing, that they could take that 15 minutes and actually concentrate on something else. Now, parents are probably not going to be able to fully let go like that, but they should keep in mind that at school, the teacher has at least about 20 other kids in the class, and they really aren't hovering over your kids the entire time they're doing work.
Oh, see, that's good insight. That's good to know. that helps.
Yeah, so don't feel guilty.
Okay.
Make sure they understand it. And I mean, let's say if there's 10 problems, you may need to help them with the first 1 or 2. Then they can do the third and fourth one with with you hovering over them. But then numbers 5 through 10, if they get it, they should be able to do it. And then you check it at the end to make sure they got it. And that's more or less the way a lesson plan works. The most basic way of explaining a lesson plan to a non-teacher is that the different parts are I do, we do, you do. So first the teacher is actively explaining, then the teacher is helping the kids and guiding them through a practice, and then the kids are practicing on their own. And at the end of that, the teacher checks the work. If the kids are getting it right, then they learned what they needed to learn. If they aren't getting it right, the teacher is going to need to reteach or re-explain.
Oh, I love that philosophy. Thank you. That's great.
Sure.
Now, is there anything else that maybe we didn't cover that you think might be important to talk about?
Sure. There's one topic that I think doesn't get addressed enough in teaching or parenting sometimes is the concept of protecting your mood.
Okay.
Which is, and honestly, when I think about what I would listen to on the radio on my way to work, for example, my first few years of teaching, it's just crazy how much I loaded into my brain before I had to go teach an oversized class full of kids who needed a lot from me. So now what I tell people is you actually need to actively protect your mood, because otherwise you're going to have to protect people from your mood. So first of all, you get enough sleep. But beyond that, I think you need to very consciously mute some people on social media if they're doing things that mess with your mental radio station. That can be anything from parents who are one-uppers and just reading their feed makes you feel bad. It can be people who go on political rants that even if you agree, you just can't deal with right now. And then, of course, you have the news, which all of us are tuned into all the time. It's mostly not good. And we do need to stay up to date with the news, obviously. But you don't need to refresh multiple different news apps on your phone multiple times an hour. Things are not changing that fast. And honestly, even if they were, even if something major happened and you missed it for an hour, and during that time you were actually able to help your kids learn the multiplication tables, who's it going to hurt, really?
Yeah. No, that's great advice. I love that. Yeah, especially how you start your day, too. I mean, I know I'm a news junkie. I have to, force myself to actually put it down because it can mess with you mentally. So I think that's great advice. That's excellent.
Yeah, you can really get blindsided emotionally and then just not be able to focus on your kids.
Right.
So, I mean, that's something you can be careful about.
Right. Okay. Well, Roxanna, this was so insightful. Thank you so much for your expertise. I'm sure we're all appreciating this. Now, where can people find you if they want to learn more about you?
My website is roxannaelden.com, and that's where people can find that 1-week sanity-saving free email series if they're looking for it. And my 2 books are Adequate Yearly Progress, which is a novel that's kind of like The Office set in an urban high school, and See Me After Class, Advice for Teachers by Teachers, if you want to get deeper into the advice that I shared with you guys today. You may end up skipping over some of the chapters like grading work, but who knows? It could be helpful.
Okay, nice. Are they on Audible as well, your books?
The novel is.
Oh, perfect. Okay. Are you on social media?
I am. You could find me on Twitter at Roxanna Elden. I don't tweet very much, but
you're there.
The best way to keep in touch is probably to sign up for my emails because I pour a lot into those, and I always try to make sure that they kind of hang together as a week of information. You should feel that each of those days of emails offers you something new that connects with the previous email.
Thanks for listening to Time Out with Tinseltown Mom. If you liked what you heard today, please be so kind and rate, review, and subscribe on iTunes or wherever you listen to podcasts. Until next time.